Greetings, Mitch Lampert here, and if all goes according to plan, this video should be released the day that Windows 95 turns 25 years old. Now, it happens that Windows 95 was such an important operating system in my life that I actually saved my old original box for it. In addition to my boxes for Microsoft Plus and Microsoft Office, and since I was in college studying to be a software developer, I also got this rather large box for Visual Basic 6.0, all back from that era. And I also happened to save 2 Tiger Direct software catalogs from around the time Windows 95 was released. And in this video, we will be exploring these catalogs. All right, these are the covers of the 2 Tiger Direct catalogs that I have from the Windows 95 era. We have Volume 5, Issue 10, and Volume 5, Issue 11, both of which came out a bit before August 1995. So on the cover of both, we have this troublemaker, Carl Fiorentino, the president at the time of Tiger Software. Now, back in 2015, he and his brother were actually jailed for securities fraud and tax evasion. But before that even happened, this whole Tiger Direct company was actually fraught with various lawsuits and unethical accusations and stuff like that. But we're not going to focus on that too much today. Today, we're just going to thumb through the catalogs themselves and see what other scams we can find inside of them, including this one right here on the cover for SoftWare. We'll actually talk more about that one later. And, well, on the other hand, we also have CorelDRAW 6 on the cover, which is actually one of my favorite programs of all time. But we'll get more to that later. I'm going to cover this earlier catalog first, and let's see what else we've got in here. All right. On page 2, we have all these nice, glossy Windows 95 cloud boxes. You know, they were actually very refreshing to look at back then. And of course, coupons. Lots and lots of coupons. Here's page 4. We have a 10-minute course on everything you need to know about Windows 95. Now, when I read this earlier, it seemed to be accurate enough. You know, I didn't see anything like wrong here, like how much RAM you need, how much performance you'll gain, because it's not a DOS system anymore, it's an actual operating system. So, you know, it was pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. And, oh yeah, here's Microsoft Plus. Microsoft Plus had a couple of cool features, but I think most of the desktop themes that it came with were actually rather cheesy. Like, even back in the day. And then there's Microsoft Office for Windows 95. You know, honestly, I think these are some of the best box art Microsoft ever produced for their Office products. They're actually quite elegantly artistic, and they're very descriptive of what the products actually do. And I don't think any other Office box art ever compared to these. And as far as the software is concerned, this is quite the sweet back then, you know. Yeah, it still is today for, you know, modern versions. And they're also featuring Microsoft Binder on the in the middle over here. Now, I happen to think that Microsoft Binder was actually quite useful. It was a way to combine files from different applications like PowerPoint, Excel, and Word into one file. It would be bound into one document file that could be read as if it were one document, even though it had components from different other applications. Unfortunately, it never caught on and it was eventually discontinued. But anyway, that's that. We also see here the Microsoft's natural keyboard. You don't see a lot of natural keyboards like this around anymore. I guess there's some that are still sold these days, but they never really went mainstream. It's not like the scroll wheels and mice, and those actually wouldn't be available until about 5 years after this particular catalog was printed. So there's that. And then there's these products here. Before the internet, you had to look stuff up on CD-ROM. And so there are these various CD-ROM reference books materials that you could acquire, including Bookshelf 95, which had a series of reference books like a dictionary, thesaurus, a small encyclopedia, etc. It had apparently complete baseball and 500 nations, very specialized applications. There was also products that were popular at the time were Microsoft Encarta and Cinemania. None of those appeared in this catalog, by the way. And later on in the catalog, though, we will see some phone books and some mapping software that would also be used for references. And here's all of your Norton stuff. Back in 1995, this was still pretty good antivirus software and utilities. Back in this era. This would be a few more years until they started becoming a lot of bloatware and slow-mo behemoths that were hard to uninstall. And now we have SoftRAM. Now this was a straight-up scam. My dad actually bought it. And I, for one, was actually skeptical of its performance. At the time, I was not skeptical about its functionality, that it actually doubled your RAM. I assumed it probably did that at the time. But what I thought of was that, like, if it's using compression to double your RAM, wouldn't the compression and decompression lower the performance of the computer? Is having that extra RAM really going to boost your performance over the overhead of the compression system? This is something that I thought about back then. But it turns out this software had a much more fundamental flaw in that it didn't actually do anything at all. This was a complete and utter scam. It was basically placebo software. And I also vaguely remember that we actually got a refund check for it. I don't remember if it was for the full amount of our purchase or maybe it was part of the amount, based on some class action lawsuit or whatever. I don't remember exactly. But I do remember that we got at least some form of refund from purchasing this software. So, yeah, that was that. And here's something else to laugh at. This is long file names for Windows 95. Now, you might ask yourself, wait a minute. Doesn't Windows 95 already support long file names? But your older applications, if you use in Windows 95, would not do that. And this program claimed that it would add long file names to all of your older programs. Whether it actually worked or not, I don't know. But even if it did, I hardly think it was worthwhile. I mean, people pretty much very quickly upgraded their applications anyway. And now we got the upgrade processors. So apparently these things were useful for penny pinching people who didn't want to buy a new PC. And I actually did a brief experiment. There's actually a couple of pages of these things. Yeah, there's also there's the Rev to 46 and there's the Make It 46 brands and maybe some other versions of this. But I kind of did my own experiment with these several years after these things were available and were already starting to become passé and outdated. I bought one of them, real cheap, and I don't really know if it really did much of anything to the machine that I stuck it in. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it was useful to a lot of other people. Now, on this page, we have another program called Connectix RAM Doubler. Now, According to my research on the internet, this program actually did work. Unlike the SoftRAM scam, this one apparently used a genuine combination of compression, allocation optimization, and its own version of a disk cache to effectively double the amount of RAM your machine had. And it even said so in the Windows control panels, unlike the SoftRAM software, which didn't actually do that. All right, now most of the rest of this catalog I'm actually going to breeze through pretty quickly since I don't really have much to say, but I'll stop if I see anything that's actually worthy to talk about. Now I actually had an MPC upgrade kit for our home computer prior to Windows 95. And boy howdy, that was awesome. That was an awesome time. Yeah. Now this software right here I think is actually rather hilarious. This is software for faxing binary files to people. So the files would get converted to these these dot patterns that you would be able to fax out to somebody. They would print it out on their fax machine, and then they would send it into a Twain compatible scanner for the computer to then reconvert back into binary files. So why not just transfer the files with a modem, you know? So I guess perhaps this was useful to somebody at some point in time, but I just think it's hilarious. Yeah. Anyway, let's see what else we get here. Yeah, Lotus Smart Suite. This is also a good Office application suite. Yeah, especially Lotus 123. Ah, yes, now it is OS2 Warp, the alternative to Windows 95. Now, I actually toyed with this operating system for a while back in the day. Long story short, I liked Windows better. I mean, I can probably do a whole separate video on operating systems I've toyed with over the years, but I'm not going to get too much into it now. Yeah, refilling your own ink cartridges. Now, I actually did this for a while. It was a little bit messy, but it did save you oodles of money. Anyway, nowadays Epson is selling their EcoTank printers on this very same premise, but they have an improved manner of refilling the cartridges, I assume. Ray tracing. Now, I actually had a shareware program for rendering ray tracing scenes once. It took hours just to produce a single, simple, low-resolution image of a blob of a couple of spheres. Okay, hours. And today we have like real-time ray tracing that can render like thousands of spheres in microseconds. It just bit boggles the mind, man. Sims games. I always loved SimCity. I don't think SimCity 2000 was the best though. I prefer SimCity 4 with the Rush Hour expansion pack myself. Hijack for Windows 95. Today we think of hijacking software as a bad thing. Now this is probably one of my favorite pages. These are eyeglasses, 1995 era virtual reality glasses. I wanted these things quite a bit back then, but they were actually very expensive and there weren't even very many programs that worked with them. Luckily, I was actually able to try these out once at a convention. It was Icon SUNY Stony Brook. Back in the mid-90s, and I actually played the video game Dark Forces, Star Wars Dark Forces, in stereoscopic 3D with head tracking and everything like that, and it was awesome, you know. So yeah, I was really kind of wanted these things, you know. But today, of course, virtual reality is like practically everywhere, and you know, I got myself an HTC Vive now with the index controllers. So you know, I'm good. Okay, I don't feel like I actually need this thing anymore. And this Timex watch, I always thought was rather fascinating technology. This would use patterns of lines displayed on a screen to send phone numbers into your wristwatch for storage and retrieval. And I never owned one of these. I preferred the Casio Databank watches, but still, I always thought this was a very cool and interesting concept nonetheless. And here is the Ultimate Internet Tour on a VHS cassette. Well, isn't that quaint? And now on the back cover we have CorelDRAW 6. Perhaps in a separate video I will defend my preference of Corel's products over Adobe's products. But for now, I'm just going to mention that actually version 6 was the very first version of CorelDRAW that I ever owned. And it's probably not as professionally recognized as Adobe's products, but still it was very powerful and it was lower in price. So it was a fantastic value. That's kind of the short version of the story. There's more I can say about it, but that's the end of this catalog for now. Yeah, most of the content of this second catalog, which came out shortly after this one, is basically the same. I mean, some of the layout is a little bit different, you know, but it's mostly the same products. It's mostly the same stuff. I'm not going to bother going through this page by page. There is one thing here on page 32 that I happen to notice, where we have these full Pentium PCs these for some reason were not in the previous catalog. But if you want to take a look at those, you can take a look at these, you know, Pentiums, yeah. It's all about the Pentiums, yeah, it's all about the Pentiums. Anyway. Whoa. Now, I also still have Windows 95 running on a virtual machine on one of my older computers. But I know a lot of other YouTubers are already sort of giving their tours of what Windows 95 software was like back then. I'm not sure if I have anything in particular to contribute to that. If I do come up with something, I will make a separate video to showcase whatever that happens to be. But whatever my next YouTube video happens to be, I'll see you then. Bye.